All right, good evening. It's 7 o'clock, and I'd like to call this meeting on November 7th, the meeting of the Urbana Sustainability Advisory Commission to order. Will staff please call the roll?
Stacy Gloss.
Present.
Dustin Allred.
Present.
Claire Johnson.
Present.
Beth Mashesky. Todd Rusk. Andrew Stumpf.
Present.
Morgan White.
Here.
Do you have a quorum?
Okay, thank you. We have a quorum. This evening, do any of the members of the commission have any changes to the agenda or additions? Okay, I have one. At the last meeting, an organization called iMatter came to talk to us about the an Urbana Climate Inheritance Resolution. I would like to add that resolution to the agenda, and I propose that we would put that under new business after the tracking summary for the climate action plan.
I agree with that idea. We should discuss it. So is that a second? Is it a motion? So can the chair make the motion? Okay, I move we do the additional agenda item that Stacy just described.
I second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so we will add the climate resolution to the agenda to discuss some of the topics on there. Thank you. Moving into approval of minutes from the previous meeting. Let's see. We need to go ahead and approve the minutes from the September 12th meeting and the October 3rd meeting as sort of just a technicality to make sure that all of the members had the opportunity to vote on approving the minutes from the last meeting. So I'd like to start with the September 12th meeting. All of you received in your packets the minutes from the previous meeting. Are there any changes or additions or corrections that you have for the minutes to the September 12th meeting?
Yeah. I think there's just a typo, like there's a date that doesn't have a space between the month and the number on that one.
Wait, which one? What was that, September? Here.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It was, it's just a simple typo. Oh, I see it. Okay, good. October 3, yeah. Otherwise, I move to approve the minutes.
Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes from the September 12th meeting?
Aye.
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 That's unanimous. You are also sent the meeting minutes for the October meeting. Are there any changes or corrections to the minutes from October?
There was one typo, but otherwise I move to approve them.
What was the typo?
I think it was discussion ensued was spelled wrong. Ensued was like endued. So I second.
Okay, so the motion is on the table to approve the minutes as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. That passes. What happened to my agenda? Okay, public input. Do we have any members of the public that wish to address us this evening? Very good. Moving on, we will have Mr. Tess provide the staff report.
Good evening. It's a short staff report this month. First, some updates on the Climate Action Plan. Staff has received a draft investment grade audit from our energy services company. The document presents a large number of energy saving projects. We're doing some initial evaluation on that, and we'll select perhaps some subset of those projects to move forward with in terms of creating some savings with low-hanging fruit to pay for some improvements and facility needs that are more long-term payback. So project is still moving forward. Big element of it is going to be retrofitting streetlights to LED. So we're just in the middle of it.
For the parking lot LEDs, did they suggest the bi-level lighting? We've done that on a lot of the parking lots on campus that have. It's an occupancy sensor where if there's no motion, it cuts the power to like 25%, which cuts the light to something like half. And then, so you still have lighting, and then when there's motion, it pops it back up to the 100%.
I think we're considering that for the parking garage. I'm not sure that we're considering it for all parking lots. Some, maybe most, I'm not sure, of our parking lots have LED. Not all do. So certainly we'll be replacing the ones that are still in HID.
So does this include the globe lights on the,
It would.
the neighborhoods as
It
well?
would, but we would only be changing the light bulb inside of it. So if you get into changing the fixture or the pole, you eat up all your savings, which if we were only considering a lighting project, those might be numbers we'd look at. But we're working to leverage the savings from lighting to do some other needed capital improvements that are also energy related.
Okay.
Also on the Climate Action Plan, we have officially closed Solar Urbana Champaign 2.0. We ended up with 447 kilowatts of installed capacity. We were shooting for, I think our goal was 150 again. I think it was 150 last year, 150 this year. So we far surpassed that. Maybe it's I can't remember. There was 3 tiers where we had discounts built in with the vendor for the residents. But we far surpassed our goals. Last year we installed 605 kilowatts. This year 447. So still a really good showing. That was 58 contracts throughout the county. So with that kind of result, we are considering a third round. I was kind of thinking that we were going to be getting all of that latent demand this second year, but that's still quite a lot. Again, by reference, Chicago did this program a couple years ago and had 600 kilowatts of installed capacity for 2 million population, whatever it is. There are, I think there was one other such program that had more installed capacity in their program. But this is still very, very successful compared to similar programs around the country. So we're going to look at doing a third round, and we'll be considering improvements, changes, additions to what that program should offer. One of the elements that we added in our request for proposal, not a requirement, but just something that we wanted proposers to consider, was a power purchase agreement option. And so that's something that we'll probably include as a question that proposers can answer, because that just gets at other folks who can't make the upfront capital investment but can do a power purchase agreement.
Any other notes from the field?
Notes from the field. The MREA, Midwest Renewable Energy Association, did some surveying and found that there were different reasons. I don't have this in front of me. There's different reasons why folks signed up but didn't follow through with a contract for a solar array. But a big proportion of it was still just looking for a little bit less cost, a little bit better price. So as the market continues to develop and we keep driving price down, we'll keep getting more folks. So that's interesting to see. I think there is still some demand, some latent demand out there. So that's what we're looking for.
You characterize how is pricing different this time around than last time around? I forget what the what the deal was.
It
when the
was
bids came in.
it was less.
Mhm.
I don't recall the difference. But in both instances, we had tiers of pricing, and so we're just the bulk purchase nature of it drives the price down as compared to market, and then the more folks sign up, we reach these tiers and we get discounts as well. So that kind of makes everybody a promoter of the program that's already signed up. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, and I guess I'm also wondering about the commercial side too, and if there's any, just thinking about pricing and any notes from the field, and it's mostly residential, and the size cap does encourage mostly residential, but there's lots of small commercial. I mean, they have a different time horizon. Anyway, I'm just kind of wondering if there's any discussion about how do we move more into the commercial side, because there's probably more growth there.
I'm not sure I don't think we cap at 25 kW, but we focus, maybe we focus a little bit
Because
on
of the
under-
SREC.
because of the SREC is a little bit more lucrative under 25 kW. But if a business comes to a session and says, I think I'm at 40 kW, we'll find them an SREC. It'll just be a different one. It
Oh, I
won't
see.
pay as well.
I see.
And so that's all viable. There may be, what may be occurring is larger businesses are going out and doing their own procurement. You can't say for sure, but
Sure.
I know of many commercial facilities that after our programs have gone out and got bids. I can't say for sure that they learned about it or were stimulated by our program, but it sure seems that way. And so, I think that's a spin-off effect
That's
that we
good
can't
too,
necessarily
yeah.
prove, but
Yeah.
it seems to be.
Okay. Thanks.
Can I ask about
Sure.
in making power purchases next year, does that mean that the city would organize like a large project that residents could buy into if they don't have solar capacity on their house?
That's a different project, but yes.
Okay.
Power purchase agreement would be instead of a homeowner paying, let's say, $20,000 all at once, there would be a third party, installer, homeowner, third party being a lender or investor who pays the installer that $20,000 and then takes a per kilowatt hour fee over time as the system produces from the homeowner. And essentially the cost that the investor paid to the installer plus financing and profit and so forth is built into that per kilowatt hour fee.
excellent.
Yeah, so that way someone can sign up for, let's say, a 20-year power purchase agreement where they're going to buy all the power that the system produces at a fixed price, a known price, but they don't have to pay anything up front. This is done often on large renewable energy developments, somewhat less so on smaller ones, although I think it's pretty common in markets like California where the grid cost of electricity is really high. People will sign up for those longer term contracts. It's a good deal. Obviously, the ability to commit to 15 years or something like that for a power purchase agreement is a different barrier for a power purchase agreement than a cash purchase, but it's good to have that option. What you alluded to is a different project, which is community solar, where so we're working with a solar developer to do a community. Well, we're working with a solar developer to do a large-scale solar array at our closed landfill, and that array may involve a portion that is community solar, and that's where you have one big, large solar array economies of scale, off-site somewhere else, and then you portion out the power to individual households or businesses, in town. And they get the benefit of, they don't have to cut down a tree if their tree is shading their house. They don't have to make the upfront capital investment. They can sign up for a 1 year or 2 year or more power purchase agreement, essentially. It's an interesting model for the operator of the solar array. So we're looking at a 2 megawatt size, essentially because that's a cap for some of the state incentives that are going to be finalized in spring. At 2 megawatts, we could easily give that to 1, 2, 3 off-takers, medium-scale businesses, and have 3 25-year contracts to manage. That's easy. With community solar, you could have 100 1-year, 2-year, 3-year contracts, which means you're always doing retail sales throughout the life of the project. That costs a lot more staff time, essentially. So it costs more to run community solar, but it allows folks who can't make the upfront capital purchase or have a tree shading their house
Or rent.
Exactly, be able to getting involved with renewable energy.
Have projects been discussed, like going up in town, like over parking garages or parking lots or something owned by the city?
What we're looking at,
I know that's more expensive, but
yeah, what we're looking at is a ground mount at our closed landfill. There's no competing land uses. Ground mount can be have some costs with the equipment, but is straightforward. You don't have to do an engineering study on the roof, and we have lots of space versus trying to parcel together 12 different parking lots. It's really 12 different small installations more than it is one big one. So I'm not sure we'd get the economies of scale. If somebody wants to make us an offer, certainly listen to it. But this is where we're focused right now is utilizing the landfill.
thank you.
Just a quick follow-up question on that. Would there be a district drawn around Urbana who can buy in, who can't buy in? Would this be eligible for residents or nonprofits in other locations?
There's no such restrictions in state statute that I'm aware of. We would be a partner in the project insofar as we've selected a developer and are working with them, and they would pay us a lease rate for the property. We could theoretically impose some restrictions on the project. Not sure that we want to.
Scott, I have a question back
Mhm.
on the power purchase agreements.
Mhm.
So do those, you mentioned it's like a 15 to 20 year time frame. If someone moves and sells their house after 5 years, does that void that contract, or does that transfer with the mortgage, or how does that work?
That would be something that the buyer and seller would want to clearly state in their agreements.
Okay.
I suppose the seller could take the equity gained from the sale and pay off the power purchase agreement, or they could transfer that, amend it, and transfer it to the new property owner.
Okay.
I think either of those probably would work.
Okay. Thanks.
One other thing,
Mhm.
on the topic of the landfill, is there any methane potential in there, or is it done?
Most methane production is early in the burial.
It's
And
it's long gone.
This is a really old land.
Yeah.
There's actually
Figured.
multiple areas of landfill. Some of it is very, very old. None of it is new. So there are some vents, but what I'm told is that methane production was looked at years ago, and there's not any commercially recoverable
Okay.
amount.
Had to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, there would have been a place to pipe it next door, but just not viable. We've been doing some public engagement that there's some notes on for, hosted a natural resources and environmental sciences class at the Public Works Building to talk about environmental careers. Also, U-Cycle staff is working with a student to do some surveying and work on improving the effectiveness of the U-Cycle brochures. We mail U-Cycle brochures every other year to all households. In part because of student populations, we have a lot of move-in, move-out within the city, so we're kind of always doing training on recycling in Urbana, public engagement. So that's one of the things we do is we mail out that brochure. So we'll be just doing some surveying on how that's working. Next SAC meeting would be December 5th at 7 p.m. in council chambers.
All right, any questions from the commission regarding the staff report? All right, let's jump right into the tracking summary for climate action plan this evening.
So I wanted to share just a summary, an overview of where we're at with our climate action plan. You normally get this chart in your monthly staff report. So we have dark green for completed, light green for things that are kind of completed, but we still do them, so continuous. Orange for things that we're working on, and black for things that are in the queue that we haven't started yet. And our time frame goes to 2020, so we're getting close. And this is a spreadsheet that I keep. This is it's exported here as a PDF. But what you've got in the first column is when the plan projected that we would start a project, when it projected we would finish the project, a date when we in fact started the project, a date when we in fact completed it but continued it, and then a date when in fact we completed it. After that, the columns are transcribed from our climate action plan. So the goal category, the action number, and then the description or subpart. So I can go through them quickly one by one, and feel free to just shout out if you want to interrupt and ask a question or make a comment. Propose an ordinance or policy requiring new city facilities to achieve LEED certification. We discussed that internally, and we added some language to our green procurement policy. It has some cost controls, so things like payback. I think it has a note that the extra cost should pay back with on utility bill savings within some time frame. So that's in our green procurement plan, so marked as completed. Next one, evaluate existing zoning and development codes for possible integration of LEED ND and other green development standards. That's marked as in progress. We've had internal conversations about that. One of the challenges is, on the one hand, you can obligate, and that has consequences. We're interested in more development, and having more obligations may mean more costs, which may mean less development. You can incentivize, where you offer something to a developer that they might not otherwise get. The challenge there is creating an incentive that actually would create additionality, stimulate a LEED ND or a LEED building or a LEED development, where it otherwise wouldn't exist. I realize now I'm actually talking about the one a couple down, propose an ordinance incentivizing or requiring new homes, and then the second one, new commercial buildings. Lead ND is a little bit different, but let me finish the thought. We struggled with identifying an incentive where if it was uptaken, we could really know that, but for the incentive, that wouldn't have been a lead building. We looked at lead incentives and ordinances in other cities, and essentially what they do is they pass the ordinance, and thereafter, every building that is lead, they say it's because of the ordinance. Well, clearly, that's not the case. Some of them would have pursued lead otherwise. So it's a little bit difficult. Also, we're, in terms of the city budget, reducing the intake of, say, development fees or impact fees is not very feasible. So I haven't closed it out as we considered it and said no, but it's marked as in progress. Back to, sorry, Tyler.
Do we have a sense, so for lead ND, I mean, I know it can mean a lot of things, but do we have a sense of what could it mean for city infrastructure, operating costs, or I guess, any kinds of, is there any intelligence on potential for spillover benefits, that could accrue to the city, maintenance, infrastructure, that kinds of stuff?
Can you repeat the first part of your question?
So with implementation of lead ND and those kinds of developments, is there any evidence that that type of development has other spillover benefits that could translate into something financial for the city in terms of, infrastructure, maintenance, operations? I imagine it depends on the million things.
Sure. I suppose if you had two development proposals for a real place, you could draw one up as conventional, another as lead ND, and measure some things.
Yeah.
I don't know that there's been enough actual lead ND developments to have data, so to speak. But
and I know you can't say generally like lead ND results in this, but
right, exactly.
some case studies or something that would help.
It's very difficult. I mean, without more, and case studies is probably the best way to pull that out. I'm not sure that I've seen any case studies where they said we reduced, utility infrastructure costs per, unit, by some dollar amount because we built compact, something like that. Clearly, those benefits are there, but I haven't seen anyone really quantify it very well. With lead ND, we discussed that internally, and there are several, I think maybe 3 parcel unit development types in the city's subdivision ordinance, and I think there was there wasn't a compelling interest to open up that subdivision ordinance at that time and add a new type for lead ND. Someone could propose a parcel unit development type and have every intention to follow lead ND, and I don't think that they would really have any barriers. But it's not a template that we've adopted. So it's something we could discuss again. So I haven't given up on it and marked it complete yet, but just in
Scott,
progress.
Are there things that are the principles in lead ND that you could incorporate, things like
Yes.
native, pollinator support and green stormwater infrastructure, or have those been incorporated into the subdivision ordinance? I don't know about the zoning or development guidelines.
Thank you for reminding me. Yes, we're doing that.
Great.
The subdivision ordinance is being worked on by the planning division, and there was a number of little bits and pieces of lead ND that we proposed to be integrated there. That was so long ago, I can't remember which ones are still in the mix in terms of the draft subdivision ordinance. But that's maybe something we can, well, probably when that draft subdivision ordinance starts going, making its public comment reviews, it may come through here, and we can pull those out and say these are the ones. But yes, exactly, we're doing that, but just not a new totally new lead ND section, so to speak. Next one, engage the Illinois State Water Survey to evaluate and update to design storm standards. We, in a friendly way, pestered the Water Survey for a couple of years on this, and essentially the barrier was they needed some appropriations from the state to do the study, and they got that, and they're doing the study now. So the idea here is we build new developments need to build stormwater retention based on what the modeled expected rainfall events are going to be. And if the modeled expected rainfall events are wrong, then we're either overbuilding or underbuilding our stormwater retention. Both are bad. So we said, well, global warming probably is going to change our rainfall events. The Midwestern Regional Climate Center presented to SAC a number of years ago and shared that exact statement. And so there was also a NOAA study that was very similar to the type of design storm study that the Water Survey does. And it expects more rain in total per year for Champaign County, and also that rain falling in intense events. So I'm glad that they're studying that. So we'll be getting an update on that at some point.
Scott, will this affect the stormwater management impact fees of more sort of in-town infill development, and what that means in terms of like regional ponding or detention, in addition to like new subdivisions and their detention retention requirements?
I don't think it will affect the stormwater utility fees, as those are for commercial facilities. Those are based on an actual measurement of impervious space. For residential, it's just a flat number that everyone gets the same number, and then that results in the dollar fee. So I don't think that's going to change. Although, I think in the next couple months we're going to have someone from the engineering section talk about the stormwater utility here, and that's a question that they can confirm. I don't know if there's a multiplier in that formula for the design storm. I think not, but we'll ask them. Let's see. So the next one is evaluate funding needed to increase the tree pruning cycle to preserve existing trees. A couple of years ago, we had the Arbor Division calculate up, what their tree pruning cycle is. Their best practice, what they like to do, is to move systematically through all the streets in the city and prune every tree one after another that needs pruning, and move through systematically. That process gets interrupted when they have to do things like remove 100 ash trees in a couple of years. They get pulled off of that work. Other landscaping work perhaps is interrupting that work. And so their cycle in terms of how fast they can get through the entire city has slowed, and longer than what they would like. And they put a number on hiring staff for another crew, and that was presented internally a number of years ago. Simple barrier is funding in the city. So we marked that as complete insofar as it has been evaluated and discussed internally. Next one is partner with existing energy efficiency programs and community groups. So that was capturing activities like the Energy Star Challenge, which we ran for 3 years, and also the Solar Urbana-Champaign program. Well, it's not energy efficiency, but similar idea. we've looked into partnering with Ameren Acton Energy, which the city did years ago. That was when we had American Recovery and Reinvestment Act dollars from the federal government, and so we brought some dollars to bear and partnered with Ameren to drive more folks into their energy efficiency programs. We don't have that money now. It could still be desirable to partner with Acton Energy, but with the Future Energy Jobs Act, all of their programming has just been in flux. So it's not something I've pursued lately, but could come up again. Next one is purchase Green Power Partnership qualified renewable energy credits in future municipal electric aggregation agreements. So our first municipal electric aggregation agreements included in the cost per kilowatt hour that ratepayers pay a price for purchasing renewable energy credits equal to the amount of power that was being used. But they were not. There was no stipulation for the certification of those renewable energy credits, and mostly what that comes down to is the vintage, what year they were generated. If you buy renewable energy credits that were generated 5 years ago, you're really soaking up old renewable energy credits that are on the shelf. We're more interested in buying new, more recently generated credits, and the US EPA Green Power Partnership limits vintage to, I think it's 18 months, something like that. So you have to stay current. So that's something we included in our, well, it was actually a side agreement in our most recent municipal electric aggregation agreement. So that's completed.
Scott, for the municipal aggregation agreement, what just roughly how much of the city population and businesses are on that agreement?
So it's limited to residences and small businesses. The definition of small business we've got on our website. I don't know it off the top of my head. Not a lot of small businesses. We don't have a count. I don't know that we have access to that kind of data. In terms of how many folks opt out, because what we do is we opt everyone in and send them a letter and say, if you don't want to be part of this, you can stay on Ameren Supply or choose another alternative retail electric supplier. The opt-out rate is a couple of percentage points. It's pretty small. So participation is high. The next one is incorporate pollinator-supported plant species in city landscapes. And along with this, a couple years later, was the National Wildlife Federation's Mayor's Monarch Pledge, which we're participating in. So we kind of put them together. And we're doing a number of things to support monarchs and pollinators. We've installed some monarch and pollinator-friendly gardens, one at this property, and we've supported other entities to do the same on their property. And always looking for more opportunities to, transition our landscapes to serve more uses than just the aesthetic.
Scott, I have a question about that one. You know, when Dave Monk was here a couple of months ago, he mentioned, I think he was talking about Olympian Drive, but basically the idea of larger parcels, more contiguity. Is there access? Are those parcels there? Is there anything to explore there, you think?
With Olympian Drive, there is a strip of landscape that doesn't have another use. It's not part of the road, and so we're planting that in a particular DOT seed mix blend, and it has some native species in it. So that's happening. We don't have a lot of large landscapes. Probably the biggest one is the landfill, It's not entirely clear that deep-rooted prairie plants would be a good idea through a clay cap. I think there's some disagreement as to whether that makes any difference or not. But it's a real question. And then comes down to price. I mean, if we were to determine that there's no significant water infiltration with respect to the clay cap with, big blue stem and purple comb flower, then the next step would probably be, sure, anyone that wants to plant them or donate seed, give me a call. But there's a funding barrier. Next item is proposed strategies to improve the local on-site renewable energy market. A number of items below that. Services that map rooftop solar energy capacity can reduce uncertainty for potential buyers. When we wrote the climate action plan, that was an application, a technology that you had to pay for. Now it's free Google Project Sunroof, right? Isn't that what it's called? So it's now a free Google application. So done. Next one is permitting practices should be tuned to minimize barriers to on-site renewable energy. We've gone through a number of steps on this item. We had some technical assistance from the Great Plains Institute, who reviewed our planning, zoning, and permitting documents and made some recommendations. We joined SolSmart, which is a best practices checklist for the same. And we are sitting on a bronze certification for SolSmart, but we haven't applied and accepted that yet because there's a potential of making a few changes and getting to silver. So at some point we need to decide whether we're going to be able to make some of those changes and get silver, or whether we should go ahead and just take the bronze. And at that point, we'll mark that one complete. Next one is group purchasing of rooftop solar. That's the bulk solar we're doing. Next one is policies that ensure new buildings are solar ready. Solar ready is an idea that if there's a new construction, the marginal cost to run some conduits and wire and just leave it available for a future 5 years later, 10 years later solar installation, that marginal cost during the construction phase is pretty small, and it would facilitate a future owner or a future improvement in the solar market to have a solar installation on that building. This comes back to the traditional challenge. If we obligate this on new development, it's a cost impact, and do we lose some development because of that? If we incentivize it, does our incentive does it actually have an additionality, and can we afford the loss in revenue? So that's where that stands. There, I've heard that there may be some state legislation introduced next year that might do the very same. So we'll see. We may, revisit it if there's state legislation, and SAC and elected officials could choose to take a position on that.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No.
I was just curious on some of these issues where you've brought up concerns about obligating developers and increasing the cost of projects and driving development away. Do we have a sense from the development community, at least locally, that this is in fact something that they're concerned about, or are there other issues, that are, not driving away, but limiting new development that have less to do than with wiring for solar or this kind of stuff? I'm just curious if we have a sense of how much of an issue this is with developers versus other things that we don't have to get into. But
I don't get any phone calls asking for more regulations and obligations. But I haven't specifically asked if there are objections to these particular elements.
yeah, I'm just curious because LEED, sells this as a marketing thing. Like, this is something developers should want to do because people who are going to be renting space or buying condos or whatever are interested in having these kind of features.
Mhm.
So there must be that's sort of pushing on developers in terms of what they are voluntarily including in projects.
Yeah.
And whether or not they're doing that voluntarily or we're adding some sort of minimum requirement to push them or nudge them in that direction.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting question, especially the nudge. If a small nudge had an impact, if you could figure that out, that's where you want to be, right? But it's difficult to determine. Yeah, I don't have a sense of, I don't think I've asked or we've surveyed or anything like that. I can tell you that we've talked about Energy Star at developer meetings, and we didn't get a lot of response from that. In terms of our Energy Star challenge, essentially every sign up was a specific invite to a known contact by myself or someone else partnering with the program, promoting it. So we're not getting a lot of folks just finding Energy Star, which is an element in LEAD, and implementing it on their own. So it's hard to say. Certainly, LEAD has its own marketing appeal, and in fact, USGBC says that there is a premium. You get paid more per square foot, for LEED facilities. Maybe some folks think, yeah, that's true in Chicago, but not true in Urbana. I don't know.
So I was just going to say it'd be nice to get a future agenda item on the permitting practices and the barriers and sort of what can be done, what has been done.
What about Kerr Avenue? Was there any experience? Because I know LEED was thrown around Energy Star, and anyway, I wonder if there are any stories or any kind of developer.
You're talking about on a street?
The Kerr Avenue development. Yeah. Anything from there?
So with both the developments in that area, Crystal View Townhomes and Kerr Avenue, I think there were representations by the developer for energy efficient buildings. So it comes back to the same challenge of how much can you ask for or obligate and still get the development outcome you want. Next one is engage Ameren Illinois to facilitate energy data access for commercial facilities through Energy Star Portfolio Manager Web Services. That essentially, so that's a request we made of Ameren, and they declined. The request is to utilize an already existing, it's called an API. It's basically a way for two databases on the internet to talk to each other and exchange data. There are states where the utilities do this by state statute. What it allows is for, instead of a person who wants to utilize Energy Star Portfolio Manager to track their bills and score their building in terms of energy performance, instead of them getting an Ameren Illinois bill and then keying that data back into another database, Energy Star Portfolio Manager, they could simply set up a database-to-database connection, and that information would automatically port every month. And at the end of the year, they'd have all their data in their building profile, and 2 clicks and click and apply for Energy Star certification. Right now, you have to enter in a year's worth of bills, month by month or all at once. It's a barrier. So we made that request. That hasn't happened yet. Next is seek funding for the Urbana Home Energy Performance Program. This was something the city ran years ago, as I mentioned, with Reinvestment Act money. And they added extra incentive dollars on top of Ameren Act on Energy's energy incentive programs. And they had a consultant that ran the program, and by their numbers had a really good impact per dollar in terms of achieving energy efficiency. It would be a very effective program, but there's just no funding source for it at this time. So we've, it's marked as complete because we've, discussed that internally.
So, Scott,
Mhm.
I mean, the pattern here is it's complete because we tried, and it couldn't be funded because we don't have the funding.
Correct.
Okay, go on.
Right. So if it says evaluate and we evaluated it, if it says seek and we sought,
We'll have to work on finding.
exactly. The next item is purchase Green Power Partnership qualified renewable energy credits and/or the installation of on-site renewable energy for city facilities. This is marked as ongoing because we should do that until we're 100% renewable electricity. Our first step in that it was pursuing a power purchase agreement for a solar array at the City Arbor Shop, which is located next to the landfill. That installation is in. We're still doing the final Ameren permitting, and it'll soon be, a live and operational facility. So that's power purchase agreement. We don't pay for the equipment. We don't own it. We don't operate it. We don't maintain it. We just pay a per kilowatt hour price, and that price is essentially the same as what we're already paying and otherwise going to pay. So the next step will be to evaluate how that effort proceeded and look for other opportunities for probably a power purchase agreement for a city facility because we don't have a funding source for cash purchase. The other barrier to a cash purchase is the city would not enjoy the federal tax credit if we purchase it. If a third party owns it and we just buy the kilowatt hours, then together we enjoy the federal tax credit. Next item is pursue long-term purchase of bundled renewable power and renewable energy credits. When we wrote this climate action plan, there was a lot of discussion about the impact of renewable energy credits. So when you get power from your local grid and then buy renewable energy credits from Iowa, what is the impact on driving more renewable energy? Difficult question to answer. One way to get past that is to sign, and maybe Morgan wants to talk about this because maybe this is what they do, is to sign long-term power purchase agreements for new construction. In that sense, you would know very well that you had additionality to the total amount of renewables. Is that the kind of projects that you're working on, Morgan?
So the solar farm on campus was new construction, and it was through a power purchase agreement. The university is actually limited to 10-year agreements, so it's just a 10-year agreement. But we intend to own the farm afterwards, so it's a long-term commitment project. For the wind power purchase agreement, we're just about, or no, it's November, so we've just finished the first year of the 10-year agreement for the wind power. It's a long-term agreement, power purchase agreement for the energy and the renewable energy certificates from that specific wind farm. It's the Rail Splitter wind farm in Illinois. And but in that particular case, it was an existing wind farm. So we wanted to start getting the power immediately, not later after it got built.
Sure.
But they are never unbundled RECs.
Sure.
Yeah. And again, a 10-year agreement.
Sure. So we've been talking with, again on this item, we've been talking with a wind developer, trying to find a location nearby here whereby we could enjoy the economic development benefits of a new wind turbine. If it's on our property, the lease benefits. If it's in the city, the tax benefits. And if nothing else, the ability to buy renewable energy on a long-term contract from a new construction where there's kind of no question that you achieve that additionality. It's difficult. There's lots of zoning considerations to take into account. So we're still working on that, and we'll see what happens. But that it's kind of the ideal if we can drive new construction, especially locally. Next one is partner with organizations conducting smart grid education and engagement. We've got that marked as completed. It maybe should be continuous. There was an effort to work with a grant funding agency a couple of years ago, and then they realized that we weren't going to get our smart grid or our smart meters for a couple of years. We did a little bit of support for a public engagement organization that was doing smart grid and smart meter education in town. Essentially, we helped them promote the event. It wasn't a huge investment. I don't know if there'll be more opportunities for that, but we've put a little bit of time into that.
It's timely now because they're rolling that out as we speak. I just got mine, I don't know, a couple days ago or something.
Yeah, there were 2 events, Urbana and Champaign, 6 months ago, something
Yeah.
like that. So. And the next item is proposed strategies to increase renewable energy purchasing in the commercial sector. One of the elements that I'm exploring, and I've had some conversations with colleagues in other cities, is utilizing the new PACE statute in Illinois, Property Assessed Clean Energy. It's a financing and repayment mechanism that makes it a little easier to finance renewable energy projects on commercial buildings. It's challenging. It's a financial consideration. There's a intergovernmental cooperation challenge, and no one else has done it yet in Illinois. The statute's, I don't know, months old. I don't think it's a year old. So we're still exploring how to do that with some colleagues in other cities. We'll continue to do that. Next item is evaluate opportunities to retrofit existing outdoor lighting with more energy efficient lighting. Doing that right now with our Guaranteed Energy Savings project. Hopefully we'll be able to delineate a project that we can move forward with and change all of our lights into LED and one at once. Next item, reduce single occupancy vehicle mode share. This is an action, and it's got several subparts that we haven't spent a lot of time, haven't been able to spend a lot of time truly. Some of this are things that fall within the purview of other divisions at the city. It's a city climate action plan. It's everybody's climate action plan. But these are not necessarily, some of these things are not necessarily things that I'll be working specifically on. So for instance, we have a bicycle master plan, and that's continuously implemented. Much of it has already been implemented. There's also an effort to create a pedestrian master plan and determine what our pedestrian infrastructure needs are, so that's ongoing. I'm not specifically involved with that. And we've had some conversations about encouraging transit ridership with MTD, but haven't come to any conclusions there yet. Next item is reduce tree species.
Scott, question
Yes.
on that before you leave it. So the goal was to go from 51 to 40. Do we know what direction the trend has been moving since this was created? Are we moving in the right direction in terms of the mode share?
I'd have to go back and look. We have, we have a very good mode share. If you put in, I guess single occupancy vehicle is putting in all the modes that we're encouraging: carpool, bike, bus, walk. Yeah, so it's incredibly high, but I don't. It's been too many years since I've looked at that data to be able to answer. Maybe it's something that we can have someone present on, either from engineering or planning, or maybe they can send a summary or a document that we can review. Yeah, there's a point where if you're doing very well, it's like how much more can you achieve. But and that's a number that the SAC, the 40% goal, was a number that the SAC agreed upon in these meetings. So reduce tree species, genus, and family preponderance to 5, 15, and 30% respectively. We have achieved let's see if I can get this, 2 out of 3 of those. And I can't remember, it was either family or species that we don't have. And what it comes down to is we have a lot of maples. And you might think, we'll stop planting maples for 30 years. But then when they all die, you have a maple population crash. So we still need to plant some maples and smooth out their age within our urban tree canopy. So that's exactly what the Arbor Division is doing. They're taking the eggs in many baskets approach. Lots of different species. Next one is work with the Sustainability Advisory Commission to inventory greenhouse gas emissions and evaluate emissions reduction strategies every 2 years. So that's continuous. 1 year, every year we're doing an inventory. 1 year it's a municipal facilities and operations inventory. The next year it's the community-wide inventory. And so every January there's a mad scramble for data to put together that inventory. And I think it's usually finished in March. I don't know if maybe it's ready for the March SAC meeting. Maybe it goes to the April SAC meeting. Next one is partner with the Green Power Partnership. We're certainly doing that. We now have Green Power Partnership qualified recs, and we submit the paperwork and we get the plaque. That's thus far been the limit of that partnership. Next item is partner with local tenant unions. The idea there was to find a way to get at energy efficiency in rented residential units where there is the split incentive. That is, the equipment's owned by the property owner, but the power bill is paid by the tenant, and separately they don't have a strong incentive to upgrade the equipment and be more energy efficient that way. So this is an item we haven't had time to work on yet. And the last one is work with the Sustainability Advisory Commission to create a new plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions for the 2020 to 2050 period.
Great, thank you for that broad overview of a report for our climate action plan. I wanted to just state a little bit about why we did this tonight, so that way it didn't seem like it just came out of left field that we would be reviewing this, but we are about 2.5 years through the climate action plan for 2015 through 2020. And it seemed like a good time to assess where the city is in achieving goals in that plan. And so that's why we thought it would be a good idea to bring that up tonight. Do the commission members have any more questions for Scott on this? Yep, go ahead, Morgan.
So, I deal with the climate action plan on campus. And I think that all of the efforts that have gone into implementing this climate action plan have been just absolutely astounding. What you do is something that what we really need is someone like you in every place on the planet, right? Every business, every household, every city, every organization, whether it's a nonprofit or for-profit or imaginary organization, all of them need somebody like you doing this. And I can't emphasize enough what a great job you do, Scott. You do such an amazing job. So thank you. That being said, we have to find a way to actually impact changes, right? And it's not you. It's us. We as a commission. I think what was put into the plan says evaluate this and consider this and evaluate that, and that's good. That's the first step. But we need to identify the things that we can Not that there are simple solutions. There are no straightforward, low-hanging fruit items out there that we haven't already picked for the eaten. So I just wanted to emphasize that the work that's been done is extraordinary, and the work that is needed is intense. Is what? Difficult.
Any thoughts from, working on the university side on things that we might consider?
Well, it's such a very different, structure because on the university side, I mean, it still comes down to how are you going to pay for something, and how do you decide to spend money on this thing that has, global implications, but no direct payback, and how do you choose to allocate your money for sustainability compared to for an emergency need, like a flood, right? If there were a flood here, the city would need to address the flood, but then they'd have to invest the money there, and they can say, and we all say, yes, this is. I mean, we've got the commitments made, right? We know it's important, but actually implementing the change is still opportunistic, and when you happen to, when the wind blows the right direction and all the thoughts align. So, there's a lot of aligning ideas and talking about what could be done. But on the campus, you at least can find all the stakeholders. In the city perspective, I'm not sure I don't know how it applies. Like maybe, we were talking a lot about the commercial sector. Maybe there's something along the lines of, well, Dustin said it, did we talk to the developers? Maybe we need to talk to every single one of them and find out what we could do differently. Stuff like that.
There was also the Georgetown Energy Prize that came and went, and I'm kind of curious about, some of the communities that did really well in that. Be interesting to know what came of them, if there's anything we can learn from those folks.
I haven't heard anything about that in a long time. I'm not sure. We'll have to check in with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, to go off of what you were saying, Morgan, obviously, in certain budget conditions and constraints, it's hard to imagine finding money to pay for things. So that's one issue. But I think another issue is, the work involved with putting in place standards and requirements and various codes and ordinances that when something happens, it happens in a way that is satisfying or moving us in the right direction in terms of the climate action plan. So I don't know. I'd like to see more discussion with groups like the development community to figure out exactly, what the real barriers are and whether or not something is in fact a barrier, or if it's, something that's fairly low and that they see or would be willing to do or not complain about, or not create the sense that, oh, this is just another reason why development isn't happening in Urbana or something like that. So just a conversation to have, I think.
Renewable energy, solar, and sustainable transportation. I do believe we have several students here tonight from a course in urban sustainability, and I don't know if it's okay for me to put them on the spot, but I may put them on the spot, to just ask if there was anything that really stood out to you that you would like to comment on, or if there are any broad themes that you hear that you're learning about right now that are just totally absent from the discussion. What have we missed? And if you've got anything that you'd like to share, we would be really interested in your feedback and sort of open to hearing your thoughts. Now, if you do speak, we do need you to fill out a form with just your name and who you are, so that way we can have you in the minutes.
I'm gonna add to that too. You guys, we're really trying to get more discussion going on and engagement with the community. So, if you're willing to say something to us, we would like that a lot. It won't hurt you at all, I promise.
Right. Well, I would ask just that you would consider perhaps coming back to the next meeting and maybe making some comments at that point. We would really appreciate it. Okay. All right. Our next agenda item. I know that everybody does not have this in front of them, so we're going to try and muddle our way through it. I wanted to add the agenda item tonight, the Urbana Climate Inheritance Resolution, to discuss the resolutions that have been proposed by a group of students that have come to our meetings previously from an organization called I Matter. And we cannot take action on the resolution tonight, so we will not be voting on the resolution this evening. But I would like to go through the three points that have to do with what is being proposed for addressing climate change in our community. And I think that we can just have a discussion around those 3 points, kind of one by one, and just talk about some of the things that we would think from either a policy perspective or from the commission's perspective. What can we do? What are some of the challenges? I don't propose this discussion to go any more than maybe 20 minutes, unless we really get into it. But we'd just like to kind of have a conversation. So, do the commission members feel sort of just briefed on what the resolution was to begin with? And do any of you, do you have that in front of you? Yeah, you do. Okay. All right, we can share.
This was emailed after our last meeting.
Mm-hmm.
But do you have any like numbers that they're asking for other than being totally renewable by carbon neutrality by 2040? Is that the only stat?
The only thing that I have is the resolution in front of me. I don't have any specific numbers, but I think that that's a good question. So the resolution states, be it resolved, the Urbana City Council commits to working constructively using ingenuity, innovation, and courageous determination to achieve net carbon neutrality by 2040. So I believe that the organization is asking the Urbana City Council for a commitment to achieve net carbon neutrality by 2040. What are some of your comments or concerns on that point?
Can I
Oh,
just
yes.
ask, what does our current climate action plan say? Maybe, I'm sorry, Scott, what does the current Urbana plan say about our goal for greenhouse gas reduction or elimination?
25% by 2020 and 80% by 2050. Those end dates are close, but not the same as the Paris Agreement. And the numbers are close but not the same, but to the Paris Agreement, which has nothing to do with communities specifically, but the U.S. in total. But essentially, if you were, they're very similar.
And what about this says 100% of the city's electricity from renewables by 2025? Do we have a specific number in the Urbana plan?
No, we have no renewable energy goal.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Well, just to jump in on the discussion, there's the iMatter students are high schoolers with support from college students, focused on really pushing for carbon neutrality by 2040. And they did that evaluation of us, of our city, based on the plan mostly. And because we had 80% by 2050 instead of 100% by 2040, I think that's why they gave us a mediocre grade of, was it C? C. But there's a big difference between just becoming carbon neutral with throwing a lot of money at something like carbon offsets or renewable energy certificates and trying to work through the process to actually make the systemic changes where we're no longer impacting the global climate. So, we have to be really careful about what we commit to.
Do we have any information about like renewable energy potential for the city? I guess like infrastructure within the city limits that would be, or anything like that.
Looking at 2 megawatts at the closed landfill. There's more space there. The issue right now is the state's current batch of incentives are working to get lots of solar developments in lots of different places. And so they pretty severely, in the current draft, pretty severely restrict bunching a lot of big solar arrays, 2 megawatt plus 2 megawatt plus 2 megawatt next to each other. When I say restrict, I mean they're only going to incentivize one of those. Those rules might change, might loosen up before they're finalized. Maybe in a year or two, we won't need those incentives and we'll still have a viable additional 2 or 4 megawatt solar array at the landfill. Don't know. We're going to keep trying to fill up that that unused portion of the landfill with solar. It's all good for us. We get a lease rate. Somebody gets renewable energy. In terms of other locations, that's going to be rooftops, which we have a couple of rooftops that are new enough that they're viable for solar. And then parking lots. We'd have to be committed to keeping a parking lot for 25 years. Some parking lots, that's probably a safe bet. Others, maybe not. But those are lots of small footprints. If they're commercially viable, definitely want to do them. But in terms of large scale, I think Morgan had a number at one point, how many acres of solar it would take to power just the University of Illinois in this community. And it was the entire Champaign County or something?
It was how many acres of miscanthus would we have to grow? And it was a quarter of the county, but not including any roads or anything, like a quarter of, actually 100% of a quarter of the county. So.
I can comment about geothermal, because that hasn't been an option, because the geothermal wasn't included in the subsidies for wind and solar, so they didn't have that same subsidy. But I guess my understanding is there's the new federal budget, or the new tax code coming in also supposedly includes geothermal in that, well, in the new tax code, that's part of this new tax code is coming in with a subsidy for geothermal, both commercial and residential, I think. So that will open up another whole sector of renewable energy. But another question I had was, so the city becoming carbon neutral, is that city buildings, or is that the whole city, I guess? That would be a question.
I'm not sure that the resolution specifies.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking that, to really support something like this, you'd have to get into a lot more details about, so City of Urbana actively work toward generating 100% of the city's electricity from renewable sources. Generating 100% implies not just buying it, but, if they're saying, renewable sources, if it's just the city using renewables 100%, aren't we doing that right now with the municipal aggregation? Isn't it currently 100% electricity for city facilities?
It's residents and small businesses.
So not the city. So, so maybe this would be an action about city facilities using clean energy, which would be more feasible. And it would still be probably be a cost at this point.
Because I know Chicago is going towards, they want to go towards the city buildings at least, being renewable energy by 2025, I think. So that might be easier to do than actual residents, if you can do the city buildings 100%.
I wasn't here last month, and I remember they presented to us last year. And is there like a local chapter? Is it a national organization? And they have local. I don't remember where do they come from?
So, iMatter was started by a 13-year-old several years ago. So this person's no longer 13, and coordinated, I believe, nationally. To set up these groups throughout different school areas, and in our town, they have University of Illinois students who are coordinating the discussion and conversation with high schoolers. So, for example, when we had the report card presented to us at the SAC. There was the chair or a representative from the Urbana High School Green Team iMatter Club who came and spoke with us, as well as the university student, which is, I remember her name because I work with her through IC as well. So that's Rebecca Laurent, who, but she's working with others as well.
I mean, honestly, I like this. I'm charmed by the idea and the effort of it, and so I mean, if we were going to encourage the city council to, commit to something that's different than our climate action plan, we would want to look at harmonizing that. I think we're having, it's difficult enough to see the glide path towards 80% right now. I mean, I am kind of a believer in, really aggressive, you can set too low of a target and therefore, not act aggressively enough. I don't know that we're in danger of not setting an aggressive enough target at the moment. Anyways, I on the 100% electricity, and finally on the mechanism for ongoing inclusion. I mean, I think we have one mechanism that already exists. We've had. Oh, yeah. Well, finally, I guess the last one, be it finally resolved, that a mechanism will be created for the ongoing inclusion of young people in the process of creating and executing climate-related policies and actions. So it's, I would say this is an open space, and we've engaged with kids in high school and other young people different times here. I guess we can always be more active in, welcoming participation. But so if iMatter is interested in participating and contributing to, we were talking about the Climate Action Plan. If they want to participate in that discussion, that would be great. So I would welcome that, and it'd be, I don't know, I think it'd be good for us all if we had more people kind of chiming in on how can we realize these goals, and what do we, to get to your point earlier, actually getting stuff done. We could use a few more minds in the room.
Is there anything that prevents like appointing a youth representative to the commission? Because I know, this is kind of a thing at the UN level that they've appointed, or they have youth representatives that have worked on the Sustainable Development Goals and that kind of stuff. So it's not
We've
out of
talked
the
about
ordinary,
that.
I guess.
We may have an 18-year age limit. We had some students come, and we offered to, let them act as kind of a shadow youth committee, and keep them in the loop and give them email reminders of SAC meetings, and it just kind of fizzled. They're doing a lot of other things, sports, band, so forth, high school. So we've tried that. It just hasn't stuck.
You could expand I know the definition of youth that the UN uses is much bigger than 18 or something like that. I don't know, maybe college age students. I guess that's kind of a transitory group too, but I don't know. If we want another perspective that is committed on attending the meetings and participating, I think that would be one way to do it. But I don't know. I guess there's an argument. There's pros and cons of that.
I'm not sure. I don't remember the 18-year age restriction. I don't know if that's a Urbana rule or if that's state statute. I'm not sure.
I was thinking, as far as what you said, Todd, about connecting, or I don't know how you said it, normalizing, matching them up, what this is asking for with the carbon neutral date of 2040 compared to what our climate action plan currently says about 80% reduction by 2050. That, trying to get those to, resolve the difference. That, something that we could look into is with the next Urbana Climate Action Plan, which is just a few years away at this point, making a commitment to seriously consider this date and having it be part of the formal process during the, renewal of the Climate Action Plan. Would be one option.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I it'd be great to have a little bit more on, what's the plan for that? How do we, what are the scenarios? For both of these resolution items. Achieving net neutrality by 2040, and then generating 100% of electricity from renewable sources by 2025. There's a lot of different scenarios, and I don't know that we have those, we don't have those scenarios right now, and money is a part of those scenarios, and I don't know, if you know what the scenarios are and how much it costs and what does it look like and where do you put it and all that stuff, that's easier to plan for. So one response could be, if we want, would be, hey, thanks, come on back and help us out.
Yeah, because, you know, we've heard from them a few times, but it'd be nice if they were able to join our meetings and participate during all the public input sessions, even if they're not, because there's not an 18-year-old age limit for public input, right?
I don't think
Right,
so.
or presentations, we can get presentations from them and ideas. I think that we're eager to have that relationship with the youth in our town and find ways to really build that connection. But it can't be one direction, it has to be two directions. You know, I wanted to say one other thing when I was looking at this, because my first reaction to moving the carbon neutrality date to 2040 is like, oh, there's no way how. How can you do that? But really, if we as the sustainability advocates don't think we can do it, then nobody will think we can do it, right? We're the ones who need to say, there's got to be a way, let's find a way. Let's find a way. Let's make the way. Let's lead the way. Where there is a will, there is a way. I can keep going.
Yeah, I think some of my questions, you know, just on the neutrality issue are going to be in our community. I mean, we live in a cold-dominated climate. Most homes heat with natural gas, and so finding an alternative in our community in cold climates for providing the winter heating needs for individuals, I think that that's going to be kind of a major challenge. And I mean, transportation is still a challenge, even though I think that we'll have the opportunity to buy a lot more electric cars in the future. But I'm also sort of concerned on neutrality issues that we're not just going to end up pushing a local issue somewhere else. So if, for example, we did stop using natural gas for our homes, that would mean, for now, switching everyone to sort of all electric. If we're moving to all electric, then that means all that additional electric capacity sort of on the grid, is that going to come from coal or natural gas plants, and who's going to be impacted in the communities where those plants are located while things are still, I mean, I don't know, maybe I am behind the times on this stuff, but while we're still transitioning to a more renewable energy future, I just don't think, you know, in the next, 10 to 15 years, we're still going to have coal plants and into 10 to 15 years, but that stuff will eventually get phased out in the system. And so moving towards like the smart grid, a grid that can be supportive of renewable energy and have utilities all sort of on board with this. Like, these are, like you were saying, Morgan, some really large issues that are going to play out on a very national and broad scale. And I love that we are struggling with that here at this local level, and that we're committed to sort of struggle through these issues sort of together at the local level. But big questions about how to get where we need to be by 2040. I guess that's all for me.
I guess there needs to be a lot more discussion about feasibility and, yeah, including this student group and what they think needs to actually happen instead of just making this number.
So just to you know, show both sides of my brain. You know, the feasibility of actually becoming carbon neutral by 2040. Compare that to the feasibility of what the world looks like in 2040 if we keep doing what we've been doing. Right? I don't know if we even have projections. We have projections about temperature changes, right? We have projections about how the climate for our specific area would change, would be more like, was it Arizona or something like that, New Mexico or something? You know, the we have projections about flooding, and we have projections about, sort of in our area what would happen here, but I don't think we really have projections about what would happen if, once the sea levels do completely rise, because we haven't actually capped carbon emissions, and well, if Boston is mostly underwater, what does that do to, or if the East Coast has several areas not there, then where do those people move, and what does it do to our economy? And I don't think we have those projections, and we haven't really considered the feasibility.
Yeah,
To us
I
of
agree. I
not
think
doing
everyone, agrees with you, but you don't, I don't know. I don't think you want to just agree to something without having a plan to execute it.
Right.
Is all I'm saying.
Right.
I agree. Definitely.
I didn't mean you didn't. It's a complicated topic.
Yeah, it is absolutely very complicated. Just building off of that, there are cities that are working towards getting ready for an influx of climate refugees that we're going to have in this country from when Miami and the East Coast and kind of all of the disastrous scenarios play out. Not to get into doomsday stuff, but there is going to be an influx of residents moving away from the coasts and looking for places to move. And I don't know, Urbana could work on a plan of some sort to accept some climate refugees, and that would be a discussion for another time. Thank you for your participation in this sort of brief discussion. What? I know, I'm gonna. Okay. So in the spirit of wanting or requesting public input after our discussion items, I will open the floor one last time for any comments from the public this evening if you would like to speak. All right. Are there any announcements this evening? All right, there are no announcements this evening. I will just say, I don't know, what do you say? Good luck or good luck or have a great time, Scott, on your trip to the UN Climate Conference in Bonn, Germany this week. We look forward to a short report back from that when you return. Safe travels there.
Thank you.
And if there's no other business before the commission, meeting adjourned.